Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. The latest deck build pack, Crossover Breakers, just got released in the OCG, and it's my favorite kind of set release. It's like a core one, but with all the legacy support and free agent nonsense stripped away, leaving only the meaty, mechanically unique themes to focus on, plus some appropriate reprints. And now that we have all the info, it's time to explore these archetypes one by one to see what they bring to the table. And for this one, we're gonna have to bring out the big table because these guests are of cataclysmic proportions. Get ready to change the world while tapping into your primal power, cause it's time for Ryu-Ge Explained. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. So what's the deal with Ryu-Ge? Well, it's hard to pin down in just a single sentence. They're all level 10 monsters and they do love that number, but they also focus around 4 different types: dragons, worms, sea serpents, and dinosaurs. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen this grouping of types. Transcendosaurus also placed that restriction on you when using Xenometeorus and Beta Evolution Pill Ultranscendence, though is also referenced a bit in Agave Dragon. Now, why is that? Well, it's a bit of a cheeky reference to how all of these types have the Japanese word for dragon, Ryu, in them. Dinosaur is Kyoryu, worm is Genryu, and sea serpent is Kairyu. Something that many of you have gone out of your ways to remind me of, thank you very much. So why is that relevant here? Well, the boss monster of the theme is a giant dragon that created the world with its own claws, and is now seeking someone to inherit its power. So now it's a battle royale between the most powerful representatives of dinos, serpents, and worms to see who takes the crown. Though the funny thing is that these champions all show up in places populated by familiar monsters, making this theme a veritable breeding ground of connections, so my lore brain is basically on overdrive. Now, despite all hailing from different types, all 3 of our core Ryu-Ge monsters are more alike than they'd probably like to admit, so we can actually cover all of them in a single unit because they all follow a pretty similar formula. Baba, champion Ryu-Ge of Wormhaze, is a windworm monster with 3000 attack and 1500 defense. Yuanba, Abyssal Ryu-Ge of Serpentfall, is a water sea serpent monster with 3000 attack and 2000 defense. And Kwaiba, rugged Ryu-Ge of Dino Crag, is an earth dinosaur with 3000 attack and 1200 defense. While in the hand, you can search out their specific Ascension Gate card by sending that monster somewhere else, which is usually in line with a place you'd commonly find that type of monster. For instance, Baba banishes itself from hand, Yuanba discards itself, and Kwaiba goes back to the deck. The second effect of these monsters can summon themselves to the field as long as you meet specific conditions, usually aligned once again with its type. Baba can be summoned from the banishment when another monster becomes banished, and there are 2 or more other banished monsters that aren't Baba. Yuanba can summon itself from the grave as long as 2 or more monsters other than copies of this card were sent to the grave from the hand or deck that turn, and Kwaiba can summon itself from the hand as a quick effect if 2 or more cards were destroyed this turn. Now, you might have noticed that I said it summons from the hand instead of the deck, where Kwaiba would go to after you fetch the Ascension Gate. But if they did that, we'd have another monster that could summon itself from the deck as an inherent effect, and I think the designers wanted to avoid that. Thankfully, that little piece of incongruity is going to get fixed later on, so keep it in mind. For now, we have to move on to their third effect. That lets you take their associated Ascension Gate card, face it from your field, placing it on the bottom of your deck, and getting some kind of benefit out of it. Baba adds any Ryu-Ge card from your deck, grave, or banishment to your hand except copies of itself. Yuanba banishes your opponent's entire hand, and if they do, draws the same number of cards. And Kwaiba destroys other targeted cards on the field, with the number of targets being up to the number of different monster types among monsters on the field, counting both yours and your opponent's. These 3 make for a devastating trio, and while they don't necessarily work well as a team so far, because they're trying to accomplish different goals, the support cards really help tie them all together, and they still make for excellent additions to themes that share their monster types. Dinos love blowing stuff up, worms have a lot of banishing going on, and sea serpents love to send their monsters to the grave for little bonus effects. Now we just need a name for this new type grouping. Dinosaurs, sea serpents, and worms are all trying to be dragons, but they aren't quite there yet. So let's go ahead and call them the Bad Dragons. Okay, ready for things to get absolutely goofy? Check this out. Guangba, Luminous Ryu-Ge of Starforge, is a light dragon ritual pendulum monster with 3500 attack, 2500 defense, and a scale of 0. As a pendulum spell, during your main phase, you can add a Ryu-Ge card from your deck to your hand, except a pendulum one, then destroy this card. As a monster, you can ritual summon this card with the effect of Guangba, Luminous Ryu-Ge of Starforge. That seems strange, but it does immediately say it can only be special summoned via its own effect, and you can only summon copies of this card once per turn. If any number of monsters on the field are destroyed by battle or card effect while this card is in the extra deck face up, you can tribute a level 10 Ryu-Ge monster, and if you do, special summon this card, which is treated as a ritual summon. Then you can destroy up to 2 cards you control, and if you do, place up to that many Ryu-Ge continuous spells from your deck face up on your field. And these are the same continuous spells that we get from our other Ryu-Ges, which is thematically relevant, mirroring how Guangba destroys to make room for these various realms. The destruction also helps to set up Kuai-Ba, which is nice, not to mention it's basically a search spell when using its pendulum effect. The ritual summoning seems like a bit of a pain to get off the ground, but with the tools we have access to, we'll be summoning Guangba like it's going out of style, which is a quick and easy way to strike fear into the heart of your opponent. I mean, it's a 3500 attack monster flanked by 3 other 3000 attack monsters. That's getting dangerously close to can OTK through a pot of prosperity territory, and I don't think we're ready for another Tenpai situation. Alright, that's all the monsters, now it's time for the spells and traps. Ryu-Ge World Creation is a quick play spell card that adds a Ryu-Ge monster from your deck to your hand. Then you can add a Ryu-Ge Pendulum monster from your hand to your extra deck face up. During your main phase, if you control a Ryu-Ge Pendulum monster card, you can banish this card and a Ryu-Ge monster from your grave to special summon a Ryu-Ge monster from your deck with the same original type as the banished monster. But you can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn. This is going to be the main way we get Guangba into our hands to get our whole train going, though nothing's stopping you from just getting any of the non-pendulums if you need them. Honestly, the second part of this effect is kind of baffling. If you take Guangba and put it directly into your extra deck, you're missing the search you get for putting it in the pendulum zone first, but it's mostly for catching your opponent off guard with the trigger ritual summon. Plant this in your extra deck in response to some kind of destruction removal activation, and get ready for your opponent to do a double take. It's also nifty in case some kind of macro cosmos effect is in play, as it gets Guangba into the extra deck while bypassing the banishing that would normally happen if you used its effect on the field. The grave effect is also pretty nice, and can trigger either if we have Guangba in the monster or pendulum spell form, getting us a free Ryu-Ge onto the board, which is useful for tributes, or to just beat the snot out of people. It truly is a versatile card for a powerful theme. And if you have any doubts, you just gotta look at the card art itself. It literally has the whole world in its hands. Next up, we have those Ascension Gate continuous spell cards, and like our non-pendulum monsters, they all have a similar structure. You can only control a single copy of each, and they each have a continuous effect. Worm Haze, the gate associated with Baba, has any monster sent from the field to the grave during your opponent's turn get banished instead. Serpent Fall, the gate associated with Yuan Ba, prevents your Ryu-Ge monsters from being destroyed by battle, which I find to be very funny given their stat lines. And Dino Crag, the gate associated with Kuai-Ba, gives all of our Ryu-Ge monsters a 300 attack boost, which, once again, is very funny. But the twist of Lime is the last part, which gives an effect to your Ryu-Ge Pendulum monsters, which is currently just our ritual, as well as level 10 or higher monsters you control that have an original type that matches the type of gates the linked monster, but all of them involve putting one of your Ryu-Ge continuous spell cards back on the bottom of your deck. For Worm Haze, the Worm Gate, the effect is the following. During your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can place a face-up Ryu-Ge continuous spell card you control on the bottom of the deck, then target a face-up monster on the field and change its attack to 0. Serpent Fall, the Sea Serpent Gate, gives the following effect. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you can place a face-up Ryu-Ge continuous spell card you control on the bottom of the deck, then target a card on the field and return it to the hand. And Dino Crag, the Gate of Dinosaurs, gives the following effect. Once per turn, when the effect of a monster on the field with less attack than this card is activated as a quick effect, you can place a face-up Ryu-Ge continuous spell card you control on the bottom of the deck to negate the activation. Essentially, this means that Guaiba, our big bad ritual, can potentially gain all of these effects, while our non-rituals can only benefit from their associated gate, which is, once again, a very flavorful execution. They do vary in usefulness. I think Worm Haze is the only continuous effect worth caring about, while the granted effects are all generally helpful in their own way. The real test of their metal is gonna be how they work in more type-specialized decks. Dino Crag, for instance, is incredible because it gives cards like Ultimate Conductor Tyranno a free monster effect negation as long as the monster is on the field. Zeroing out a monster's attack seems like a great way to get a lot of damage in with Memento to Kuchlika, Combined Creation, and bouncing a card can be a game changer in, Punk? By way of Amazing Dragon, that is actually pretty funny, and is probably a better off-theme shell for this than, let's say, Gladiator Beast Dominianus. Do not laugh! Ryu-Ge Ascension Crest of Transmigration is a field spell card that, when activated, takes 3 monsters from your deck, a dinosaur, a sea serpent, and a worm, and adds 1 to your hand, banishes another, and sends the last to the grave. Also, you can't special summon for the rest of the turn except dragon-type monsters, as well as the bad dragon types, which will henceforth be known as the Crest Lock. And if you have Guangba, Luminous Ryu-Ge of Starforge in your extra deck, you can special summon 3 Ryu-Ge monsters with different types, 1 each from your deck, grave, and banishment. This is the card that completes the combo, and it does so in outrageous fashion. You'll want to be searching this off of Guangba's Pendulum spell effect, then activating it to put Baba in the banishment, Yuanba in the grave, and Kwaiba in your hand, which you'll put back into your deck to grab Dino Crag. Then, use Ascension Crest's second effect, because you have Guangba in your face-up extra deck, to summon out Baba, Yuanba, and Kwaiba. Activate the Dino Crag, and there you have it. You're the proud owner of 9,900 total attack points. And if a monster is destroyed, you now also get to bring out Guangba for even more damage. To say nothing of the impressive rank 10 access you now have. Varudris feels like a pretty thematic choice here. Not only is it an Omni-Negate with plenty of destruction to go around, the final bringer of the end times feels like the perfect herald to bring about the beginning of a new world. But don't get me wrong, the destruction is still sticking around. That's not going away anytime soon. Ryu-Ge Eternal Recurrence of Trailokia is a normal trap card that summons a Ryu-Ge monster from your hand, deck, or grave, but is returned to the hand during the end phase. You can banish this card from the grave, then target a Ryu-Ge continuous spell card you control or that's in your grave or banishment to place it on the bottom of the deck. Then you draw a card. This is a pretty decent support card to round out the roster. We can't summon Guangba with this due to ritual rulings, but the other 3 are fair game. If we have an Ascension Gate on board but not the right monsters to use it with, Eternal Recurrence can get it onto the board long enough to make use of its effect, and when it goes back to your hand, we can use all of its effects to get another gate while setting up for another summon. And by recycling our gates with the grave effect of Eternal Recurrence, we can ensure we always have the right gates in rotation while giving us some nifty card draw. Though the real impact of this card may be the reveal of Guangba's ultimate trick. Fellas, if that dragon's been making you do this competition for eternity, it's not looking to pick a successor, it's something to watch while it eats dinner. You have got to unionize here. Alright, that's all of the Ryu-Ge cards, but what do we do with them? Well, our game plan seems pretty cut and dry. Get Guangba into our hand by whatever means necessary, add Ascension Crest to get our 3 honorary dragons into rotation, and turbo them out so we can seize control of the board. So we're gonna need to find as many cards as possible to help us accomplish this goal. Otherwise, we'll have to find some other themes that these titans in training can lend their support to. So what can we play to help them out? First off, let's see what themes we can mix Ryu-Ge into. And the first thing that comes to mind is that Guangba is a light dragon ritual monster. So, strangely enough, Voiceless Voice synergizes pretty well here. You'll have to summon Skull Guardian before committing to the activation of Ascension Crest before putting yourself in the Crest Lock, but Queen Saphira can search Guangba, which can then unfold into our 3 Ryu-Ge monsters. Furthermore, once you pop a monster with Skull Guardian's Negate, you can trigger Guangba from the extra deck to bring it out, and turn any of our spare cards into even further disruption, making our board even harder to crack. Dinosaurs also get on great with us. There's so many ways to destroy cards that it's actually rare to find cards that don't get Kwaiba's summon effect online. Not to mention that we can also trigger Baba's summon by banishing Miscellaneousaurus, or by summoning Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, whether we're using its own effect or via double evolution pill. Sea serpents don't really have many options, but Mermail and Atlanteans can have a lot of fun with Yuanba. They're always pitching monsters from their hand like it's going out of style, so it's going to be incredibly easy to get Yuanba out of the grave to act as an extra body. Although none of their on-theme monsters are going to be able to benefit from Gate of Serpent Fall's granted effect, since none of them are level 10 or higher. Though interestingly enough, because the Deep Sea cards hand-rip our opponent by banishing, they do give us an opportunity to summon out Baba. Speaking of which, worms! Metaphys monsters love being banished, and they're going to benefit immensely from both Ascension Crest and Gate of Wormhaze. And Baba's gonna have a field day with Metaphys Ragnarok alone. Otherwise, Sword Soul regularly banish worms to fuel cards like Taya and Shijiao, and their bigger bosses will gain the attack reduction effect granted by Gate of Wormhaze. And while the Tenyi won't be able to access this, as all of their monsters are links and don't have any levels, they are constantly banishing Tenyi spirits. So there are definitely worse ideas than backing up your Dragon Warriors with another kind of honorary dragon. Lastly, Guangba is a Scale 0 pendulum monster, so your first instinct is probably going to be to find a suitable high scale to work with it. And I've got my eye on the Supreme King Zark package. Scale Supreme King Gate Magician, then blow it up to set Supreme King Gate Infinity from your hand or deck. Then, you can Pendulum Summon it along with any spare Ryu-Ge Monsters you have in hand because your scale goes up to 13. Plus, you can search Soul of the Supreme Celestial King straight from your deck to Spring Zark on your opponent and wipe out their whole field when they least expect it. And hey, if you caught a monster with that effect, you'll even trigger Guangba's summon. It's kinda wild. Now, if we want to play Ryu-Ge as its own deck, we're gonna need to get creative. The whole theme's game plan hinges on having access to Guangba at all times, since having Ascension Crest doesn't mean much if that big ol' Pendulum Ritual Dragon isn't in our extra deck. Luckily, there are plenty of other options out there that can help us out. Senju and Manju have been seeing significantly less play in recent years since they only work on normal summon, but we don't value our normal summon at all, being a theme packed to the gills with level 10s that special summon themselves, so they'll work perfectly fine with us. Although Diviner of the Herald has been the preferred option for this in most modern ritual decks, and for good reason. By dumping Herald of the Arclight from your extra deck, you'll get that ritual search while giving you a level 6 tuner to work with. Not to mention that Diviner triggers on special summon. But while having plenty of starter monsters is all well and good, it doesn't mean much if we haven't got a way to leverage the extra deck. And while the Crest Lock does significantly limit our options when it comes to playing from it, its first effect that shuffles those monsters around is not limited to our own on-theme monsters. We can pick anything from those 3 themes. So we should go over a few options that allow us to raise our ceiling beyond Varudra's Pass. Let's start with dinosaurs. Giant Rex and Kaitoptera make for wonderful rank 4 material once you banish them, and Kaitoptera can even act as a wall if your opponent goes wide with a lot of non-wind monsters. And in Fiendsmith format, that's not a big ask. Not to mention that Kaitoptera can even fetch you a copy of Polymerization. Although the only somewhat generic fusions that we can properly use in this context are Hornosaurus and Atrishula the Icy Dragon of Imprisonment, the latter of which is hardly worth mentioning because we aren't going to be running enough dragons to make it work. However, Source can use a dino or a dragon for the secondary material, which can then give us an extra normal summon and a new field spell, letting us pivot from Crest to something like Lost World or Dragonic Diagram. Otherwise, we can grab 2-headed Dino King Rex to summon onto an open board while popping a smaller monster, or Dino Wrestler Pankratops as an excellent way to either force or punish interactions when you're going second. Lapis Dragon is the only sea serpent worth considering in terms of Ascension Crest's activation targets, but a free summon from hand isn't nothing, provided you don't end up drawing it. Its level is a little awkward to work with, but we can pair it with Manju or Senju to make Chao Feng. We sadly don't get the Floodgate effect since we didn't use any Yang Zings as material, but if we destroy it with Guangba's on summon effect, it can grab us another copy of Diviner for some follow-up on our next turn. Or, if you don't need that, grab Effect Veiler or any Ghost Girl hand traps that you're running, with Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit being the one that has the most synergy with us in order to trigger Guangba. Speaking of worms, Virtual World Otohime Toto can be sent to the grave by Ascension Crest, and summoned out of the grave as a tuner by pitching a spare worm from your hand, and from there, it makes for excellent synchro material with any of our level 4 starters, or rank 6 material with Diviner, while setting up Yuan Ba to be summoned from the grave. Granted, we're locked out of all of our psychics, which is half of the Virtual World bunch, but we don't have to stay confined to that archetype, we can use it to support another. Like dragons! But you do lock yourself out of Link summoning for the rest of the turn by using Otohime, but there aren't really any Dragon Link monsters that can help us in this situation, and the selection of honorary Dragon Links is not the best, so we're not too torn up over not having access to them. Otherwise, Sword Soul Auspice Chun Jun can be added to the hand, and that accomplishes much the same, while letting our other starters dodge impermanence and Effect Veiler. It can also give Baba an El Shaddai construct effect against any extra deck monster, and if you're able to use it in a synchro summon, it takes another card out with it. Now, let's turn our attention to generic extra deck monsters. The quest lock does limit our options a lot, but for rank 4s, we can easily make Abyss Dweller and a Tornado Dragon, and they can both do some serious work against grave-centric themes and back row decks respectively. But if we started on Diviner, we can also access level 10 synchros, and there's no better generic option than Cheng Ying. Triggering its double banishment isn't hard at all, especially with Gate of Wormhaze active, or heck, just banish Eternal Recurrence from your grave during your opponent's turn if they're being coy about it. As for our rank 6 options, Virtual World Phoenix Fanfan, while less repeatable than Cheng Ying, accomplishes the same thing with no condition required to activate it, and it can even be used to banish our own cards, so if you need a monster in the banishment to trigger Baba or to enable Ascension Crest, this bird's got you covered. And Volzar Lars is another Omni-Negate that can't even be targeted, and it doesn't even need dinosaurs to make it, so why not include it? One debilitating weakness this deck has, though, is to Drollin Lockbird, especially because we need to search multiple times before our game plan can even take off. Plus, Ascension Crest search on activation is mandatory, meaning you can't activate it at all if Inner Crescent themselves has made an appearance earlier in the turn. So if you're in need of a workaround, Pendulum Treasure does exist. Just use this to put Guangba straight into your extra deck from your main deck, and you don't even have to risk getting drolled before you can activate Ascension Crest. As for a silly tech pick, I think that Reaperduckus finally has a home outside of frustrating FTK strategies. Our extra deck options are limited enough, but a lot of them require materials of specific types, and that's where Reaperduckus comes in. Set whatever starter you use to the type you need, and a plethora of options land at your feet, from Evolzar Logia and Dolka to Qijing Long Yuan, along with tons more that there simply isn't time to go into in full, so have fun cooking, brewers! And that's all I have to say about Ryu-Ge. This theme is already off to a great start, with a powerful linear game plan and the potential to see splashes in other established themes to ramp up their power. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has seen a lot of experimentation in this realm, creating support for groups of types, and I'm all here for it. Not only does it breathe new life into themes desperate for some fresh air, it helps to build out the ecosystem of the game world itself, and what types tend to synergize with one another. But do we have to destroy the world every time we want to build a new one? I mean, Guangba can just make worlds, why not just do that instead of turning our world into a free-for-all between all of a grade schooler's favorite fantasy creatures? Stop taking your talking points from Thanos! But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Ryu-Ge the harbingers of a new era of stamping destruction, or are they just a bunch of fakers looking for attention? And which one's your favorite? I myself am a big fan of Kaiba myself. It's very imposing, and its name sounds like Kaiba. Let me know your favorite down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and get 5% off your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and the Wizard Moose, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabits, Ada Basilisk, Adams Ajdel, Oexotoahime, Anansi Dragon, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Leo 458, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Megacombi, Millennia Asta, Mern, Muse Clark, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Pat Poos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Serenity Towns, The Critic of Innocence and Thievery Coast, Cosmic Crusaders Andrew J. Whitaker, Ariel Kersey, Bedin von Titty Sprinkles, Beelzephyr, Beluga Masta, Blitzwolf, Chaz Ghost, Dr. Reaper RIP, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heat the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, Lobamaru 02, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, McSpoofy, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Nyx, Obsidian, Shizuka Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Pokemon 52, Tiger X2476, Weasel King of Weaseltown, and Zaldreka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see another video about this incredible quartet of monster types, check out this video where I cover the Transcendosauruses. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.